I'd like to bring the meeting of September 9th to order here and ask if anyone beside LCAT is recording.
Shirley?
Shirley take credit for the minutes.
Okay. Review the minutes and approve the minutes of the meeting of August 19th.
So moved.
I think I have one, all right, so I'll second it for the purpose of discussion. I think I have one amendment, I think I do, which was review and approve the minutes, the very first thing. I think Mr. Mayberry made the motion and Mr. Burek seconded it.
You're correct.
I think Mr. Wilson asked for the motion.
Right.
So with those corrections, I would say we're good to go.
So noted, and
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And at this point, turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. If I could direct your attention to the table that's 2 or 3 sheets into the handout. It's very similar to what you've seen in the past. We're now 9 weeks into the new fiscal year, so it's appropriate to start tracking our financials for the year, since we can start to see some meaningful trends. We're still early enough in the year that there's some variability in the numbers where you might have a large bill that comes in or something like that that can cause a temporary spike in some of these percentages that you see. But as I said, we're far enough into the year. I think it's now worth spending some time to take a look at the trends. Overall, everything looks good. The trends compare well to where we would expect to be. We are 17% into the year, and most of our budget items are 17% or less expended going into the year. There is one item that you'll probably look at and see that we are a couple of percentage points ahead overall, and that is under building maintenance, under expenses, and that's largely due to the fact that Mr. Fenny was able to move forward with some work that he typically does a little bit further in the fall this summer, and primarily related to boiler cleaning and service activities across all the town buildings, and that accounts for about the $20,000 difference that you see in terms of where we had expended last year at the same time versus this year.
Where do we stand with the hot water tank at Birchland? And who's paying? No, but what's it coming out of the money?
That came out of our building maintenance budget. We also notified appropriations and capital of that expenditure, just in case we have a shortfall towards the end of the year.
Okay.
Wasn't that about 20 grand?
Yeah, that is not actually though reflected in that number due to the timing of
Okay.
when the bills
All right.
came in.
I was
So
going to say it was a big. but
it was a big expense
yeah,
there.
That would be it right there if it was.
Correct,
Okay.
but it was primarily the boiler service work that was done ahead of schedule, basically, that meant we were able to get further into the year in terms of completion.
Okay.
All the other items, again, tracking very favorably. Obviously, energy is tracking extremely low because we were in the best time of year with electricity being down and gas usage being essentially non-existent. We're very, very well below where we'd expect to be, but I'm sure that trend will change very rapidly once we get into the wintertime. So I think, again, I'll keep paying attention to these trends. I'll keep reporting them to the board on a monthly basis. I think we're exactly where we want to be right now, if not, maybe in a little bit better position than just being on budget. Another financial item I did want to report on, and that is relative to billing from the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission. Every year what the Water and Sewer Commission does is they prepare an estimated budget, and they bill us based on the estimated budget throughout the 4 quarters of the year. Once they get into the first quarter of the following fiscal year, they then do a true-up to see how the projections of what expenses would be versus what actual expenses were for that year. In some years, that true-up means that we actually end up having to expend more money than we had anticipated and budgeted for, and in some years that means we have to spend less money because we essentially get credited for payments made in the previous year. Good news this year is that the costs were less than expected, both on the water side and on the sewer side. So we're seeing a little bit of a pickup there this year. Another trend I started to talk about last month, which was where our water usage is this year compared to previous years. We're really holding pretty steady to about 96% of last year. We just received the August numbers in a day or so ago. There was some concern that we discussed at last meeting about what might the water supply emergency have to do relative to what our revenue might be, which is really driven by how much water our customers use, how much water that we consume. It was really, I'm certain there was an impact over a couple of day period, but when you take a look at the monthly numbers for this August and compare to the monthly numbers to last August, there's really no difference between those numbers. So I don't believe it is going to have any sort of a meaningful impact on our revenue this year.
And you're looking at it calendar year, or
Looking at a calendar year.
that's calendar year?
Yeah. If I actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it is fiscal year, right?
It's fiscal
That's
year.
correct, sorry.
Based on.
So it started July 1st, the 96 that we're using is a July 1 start.
No, actually, then this is where mixing things, the water consumption is calendar, the financials are fiscal.
The financials are fiscal.
Right. Right, so we have come through now our peak months. So as I'm looking at that 96%, it includes, June, July, August, et cetera. So we've gone through the peak months, and we would now expect to be on the downturn. And as I said, the trends are holding pretty close, within a few percentage points of where we were last year. A couple of other administrative items. We will be taking bids, if you can believe it, for rock salt very shortly. We'll be advertising next week on the 15th, and we'll be receiving bids on the 10th of October. As we have done in previous years, we are teamed up with the City of Agawam and the Town of Long Meadow to put together a combined bid package with the hope of getting some economies of scale, particularly with communities that are located very close to 91, where hopefully some of the transportation efficiencies might be realized. As we talked about in the past, we do have an infiltration inflow rehabilitation project out to bid. It was advertised a couple of weeks ago, and the bids are now due on the 22nd of September. So I would expect at the next board meeting we'd be in a position to report on the results of that, and hopefully, if everything is in order, make a recommendation relative to award.
Will that be done this fall or this spring?
Portions this fall, but probably mostly by the springtime. Depending on what the winter is like, some of the work could be done through the winter time, some of the work might not be able to be done in the winter time, so it really will be weather dependent.
Is there any adverse effect to doing it in the winter?
Not really. Most of the work that you're doing is underground,
Right.
even lining and sealing manholes. Once you get a couple of feet below ground and open up manhole cover, it's actually pretty
It's
warm.
warmer, yeah.
So freezing conditions aren't a real big issue. In fact, that time of year, guys don't mind climbing into manholes. because
Would it be better if the water table's down?
For the manhole sealing, it's actually better when the water table is up because you get a better idea of where you need to be patching.
Okay.
Basically, you look for flowing water, and where you have flowing water, you look, at first they epoxy inject behind the manhole, through the manhole, so they stop the flow of water behind it, and then they come and they coat the surface of the interior of the manhole. So if you actually have observed seepage, you're better able to target the places that need to be fixed.
So they're going in the manhole where you got a leak, they're injecting epoxy through the manhole on the outside, from the inside?
From the inside.
Okay.
Because in order to do the sealing on the inside, you have to stop the flow of the water
Right,
for that
right.
sealing to be able to take.
It's pretty cool.
Next item, and I'm actually very pleased to report that we have made a selection on a new town engineer. The gentleman's name is Daniel Murphy. Myself and Mr. Wilson, as well as Mr. Fenney, interviewed Daniel and another very strong candidate, and it really came down to the end of the day of who we felt was the best fit for the position and for the town.
Title is town engineer, is that what you're calling?
Town engineer is this, so we'll be separating the title, the dual title that I currently have, which is town engineer and superintendent. Superintendent is a bylaw required position. Town engineer doesn't exist anywhere within the bylaws, so it's really at the discretion of the department to give that title to whatever individual we feel, whether it's one and the same or a separate individual. A couple of advantages. One, I think it gives the board some flexibility in the future in terms of filling the superintendent position. I'm very strong believer that the town needs to have an engineer on staff, but that engineer doesn't necessarily need to be in the superintendent's seat. So it, again, gives you some flexibility in terms of how to fill that seat in the future.
Are we within the budget of what the project managers?
We are bit higher than what the project manager was budgeted for, and that, quite honestly, was by design. I was looking for a more qualified person. I was looking for more experience. I was looking for more technical capabilities. I was looking for, certifications, being a professional engineer as opposed to having somebody who has technical capabilities but isn't trained as a technical professional. This year it won't be a problem because we've had the position unfilled for a couple of months, and that will fund the increase in compensation. Next year I'll have to work with the budget to make certain that we can make it still fit within whatever increases will be allowed this year. A little bit of background on Dan. He's going to be starting on September 22nd. He is currently the town engineer in South Hadley, and he's been in that role for the last 4 years. Prior to that, he worked as I did in private practice on the consulting side of the business, so he's got a good mix of public experience as well as private experience, which I really think is a benefit in terms of knowing what it takes to kind of get things done, understanding the public sector, but also understanding the production practice that you'll learn a bit more on the private side of the business. He also has a very broad technical background. He's worked on a wide variety of water, wastewater, particularly solid waste projects, roadway projects, so he's going to be a good fit. It will allow us actually to take some tasks that are currently outsourced by the town, not by the Board of Public Works, but primarily by the Board of Selectmen relative to landfill monitoring, gas monitoring, things like that at the transfer station, and be able to bring those services back in-house, because we'll be able to self-perform those with our own staff. So overall I see there's a benefit in terms of having more capabilities that will allow us to do more at less cost, because we won't have to outsource as much work as we have in the past.
He's a great candidate. I mean, he'll be a great asset.
My goal is, Dan, I'm hoping to have him in for some time before the 22nd, before he starts full time, and it's depending on schedules. My goal is to have him, introduce him to a few folks, and if I get a day where he's got a couple of hours free, I may reach out to some of you and see if you've got some time to meet with him beforehand. Moving on, fall town meeting, we've talked about it before. The deadline for submission of articles is September 15th. As I understand it, there's a relatively small list of articles right now that are being put forth across the town. We will be involved in at least 2 of the articles. There will be 2 easements that are being proposed for taking or for granting, and that'll both to National Grid. One is an easement for property behind the salt shed at the DPW yard here, where they currently have an overhead easement, but they don't have an easement to install underground utility lines, and as part of their upgrade project on their overall utility transmission upgrades, they need to install some of the wiring below grade. So they want to be able to expand not the location of the easement, but the work that they could do within the easement to include underground utilities as well. And then there's a similar situation with the work that was done at the Meadowbrook School, where we brought in a new electrical service to the school. It was brought in underground as opposed to overhead. And likewise, there's a need to have an easement that grants them the right to put those lines and maintain those lines underground. I had discussed this with Nick Bro, with the town administrator, and the feeling was that since the Department of Public Works has been intimately involved with both of these projects, it would be most appropriate for the Board of Public Works to put these articles forward. Even though one of them is on school property, it's really something that we know more about than any other department does. The other items that might be on the agenda are there are 2 streets out there that are being discussed relative to street acceptance. One of them is Wisteria Drive, and the other one is Betterly Lane. The holdup in both of those projects may be that, given that this is a special town meeting, the petitioners will have to receive 100 signatures in order to place it onto the town meeting warrant, and whether or not those signatures will be in place by the deadline is still undetermined at this point. As I understand it, if it was the annual town meeting, it only takes 10 signatures, but a special town meeting will take 100 signatures. Both projects are in pretty good shape. We've put together preliminary punch lists. Most of the items are being taken care of. I expect there'll be a couple of more items that'll show up as we get closer and closer to the deadline, but generally they look to be in pretty good shape. Only other item I had, and we don't need to decide it now, but we had talked previously about getting together for an end-of-season cookout with our staff. We talked about waiting until after the summer had gone through, because we have a lot of staff that have been on vacations for the summertime. We've now gone past that period. And I think Mr. Collins and I have tentatively talked about trying to do that maybe on October 3rd, if that works for the board, on a Friday afternoon, have a cookout for lunch. Right now, we have the majority of our staff on hand that day. As we get closer, I'm sure that'll change, but right now, it's wide open.
I'll be out of town. but-
Okay.
My phone in the car.
What's that?
I left my phone in the car charging.
Oh.
I've been out all
I
day.
know I'll be out of town on October 3rd.
I'm good on the 3rd.
Okay. It's something we can confirm later, but
Yeah.
we don't want to let that slide, because if we don't decide on that sometime in the near future, we'll miss it, and it'll be Christmas time. We'll be talking about a Christmas party instead.
Right.
Are you around Wednesday, or are you out that week?
I'm gone from the 1st to the 13th.
Maybe September 30th as an alternative day. It's
Yeah.
Tuesday, but
That works for you guys, before the 1st or
Sure.
after the 13th?
I think that week is all pretty good. It's not a heavy vacation week for us, so, yeah. Okay. So we'll double check and get back to you if
When
there's any.
when do you want to have it? September?
30th, it's a Tuesday before he leaves. Or we gotta go to like the 15th or
Yeah,
something.
correct.
I don't think it matters Monday through Friday what day, really, right?
Not really. I think that would work.
Right. You can check yours out.
Yeah.
And with that, that's it for my items today.
Okay, so you'll just send us an email
Yes.
regarding that? Okay.
Town hall, if I can, just a question.
Yeah,
The
sure.
town meeting, so I think appropriations might have been anticipating electrical upgrade or bathroom renovations or something else, just based on, at the last regular town meeting, we pulled everything as far as town hall renovations. I'm pretty sure I understand correctly that Ryan has moved to a school facility somewhere with part of the IT or the IT staff. The servers are still in the building, in that room behind the servers.
That's vacant right now.
Potentially in play. I'm gonna assume we're not gonna try and rush something for our fall meeting, but do we have traction on what we're gonna do potentially with that building? Is that?
Bruce and I have talked about now is the time to start getting together with the departments to get everybody on the same page as much as we can, because that really is going to be key, so we can get broad support for the project. So it'll be over the next month or two, so we can then define a project, define the cost of the project, so we can put it forward to capital late this fall.
All right, because I think we probably should set a soft deadline for ourselves of like November,
Yeah.
because then there's the education process to go in before appropriations and capital, the rest of the filtering, and before you know it, it's submittals for January, February for the May meeting, and I'd rather not have not enough information as the reason why we don't either decide to do nothing or do something. I'd rather,
Be proactive.
and I think we'll have to take the lead, which you have been doing, but I think we'll have to take the lead and see what the flavor is and get some numbers together.
I think it'll actually help our case also, because I know space was, a lot of the main concerns with a lot of the departments. By freeing up that space, that it's gonna allow us to expand into that. It's a single office, it's not much space, but I believe the renovation price, everything's gonna probably stay the same. It's just gonna maybe take some of those questions out of the atmosphere as far as the committees and other departments within the town hall, so.
Right.
Timing is good in that we have a department head meeting tomorrow, and I have broached the subject at previous months' department heads that will be going in this direction, and it'll be a time to really kind of put it out there tomorrow and indicate to the group that we'll be looking to work together to develop a plan that we can all get behind.
Just a curiosity thing, is everybody attending those, the department heads? Because I know there was a point in time when they were pretty sparsely attended, or...
They vary. Summertime, they're definitely pretty sparsely attended. I would say there's probably 80% of the department heads there. I know this is my first one to host, so I'm the one that gets to send the meeting invite out and put the agenda together. I had one individual who couldn't attend that replied he couldn't, but only one so far.
Good. And in your absence at regular ones, would Bruce or somebody attend? If it crossed up with some training or
Certainly
something.
could. In the past, haven't, but I could, well, in the past, Sean may have sat in for Dave a couple of times, or you.
And I have, and I
Yeah.
think actually John did too.
Right.
Yeah.
And it may be the type of thing, particularly if we're using this as part of the consensus building process, to have more than one person there, so we can, you know, that's really the forum to talk about this thing, so people aren't defensive.
Right.
And they understand that we really are trying to come up with a plan that works for everybody within the limitations that we have.
So maybe you and Bruce?
I think, yeah, I will bring it up tomorrow, and then I'll commit to a schedule to get the group back together specifically to talk about building issues.
But
So with that, I'm all set.
Okay. We'll hear from Building Facilities Manager.
As of last week, September 2nd, we did close down the Pine Knoll Pool facility. We have been draining the pool for a week, so it's been a slow process. I do have a meeting scheduled for kind of a closeout for the project with the engineer tomorrow to do an inspection. Kurt's Incorporated, the contractor, and Joe Worthing, the, I guess, pool construction foreman. We're going to be going over some punch list items that couldn't be addressed because of the tight schedule we were under, just some minor things. So we'll be looking at the pool tomorrow and then scheduling the winterization of that equipment up there, probably within the next couple of weeks. Another
On that, you had provided, I believe, a budget update to George
Yes.
Kingston for CPA purposes, and I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
comment relative to that.
he did, George Kingston from the Community Preservation Committee did reach out to me just to wonder where our budget stood and what we'll be turning back to community preservation. So I gave him a rough dollar figure of about $25,000. We have roughly $28,000 in the budget, but based on closeouts and everything else, in case something needed to be expended for that facility during closeout, I didn't want to give him the lion's share of the money. So I've given him a brief overview on that. I think he's going to be presenting something at the special town meeting in regards to the Pine Knoll Pool. Okay. Another item, I have the tennis courts. The lining and servicing was completed as of yesterday. Curing of the paint takes roughly 48 hours. I do have a few punch list items to review with the engineer. The nets are up. I got a couple fence post issues. But other than that, the place looks good. I'm getting a lot of kudos, I guess you could say, from Sam Pezzanelli and Karen from the Tennis Association. The school department is contacting me today, wondering when they can get on it. So I got to figure probably around a week or so to address some of the, there's a piece of equipment that's missing. The center net lines haven't been installed yet, so just waiting for the formalities to take place, and then we'll probably be opening it up next week. Sam Pezzanelli also reached out to me, tried to set up a kind of a grand opening, a ribbon cutting ceremony. Him and Gordon are going to be kind of arranging that along with Colin Drury, and I'll keep the board posted on when that will be.
What about the lights? Where do we stand with the lights and
The lights, I'm still waiting for that grant information. Currently, we do not have enough money to purchase the new lights, footings, conduits installed. I am going to be installing the old lights facing the practice field. Just because of the size of the service that's needed for the new lights, I'm working with National Grid to provide a new service just for the tennis courts, because the existing service would never have the capacity to light those courts. So I'm working with them to come up with a plan and a budget amount for that. We still have quite a bit of money left in the tennis budget for the service and stuff, but definitely not enough for the lights themselves.
talked about lighting initially the front and waiting for future funding for the rear courts? Is that something you're considering? And wait for the whole thing, do it all at once?
The problem with doing that, Dan, was the running of the conduit, running it into an existing service that's already way outdated and out of capacity. So I took it upon myself and some advice from my electrician to run a new service to a different location instead of feeding an old antiquated system. That's not going to benefit, I guess, those courts in the future. This would give us, because the existing service was maxed out as it is, so we couldn't even add an outlet to that existing switchgear. So I thought it would be more beneficial to add a new service. And like I said, even with those old lights, because I guess of the summer concert series, which I didn't realize utilized that practice field, and the Pee Wee football league that utilizes that practice field. So that's why I ended up going this way, especially because of that. If we wanted to tap into that existing service and light the football field, we would never be able to do it. We would need a new service regardless. So I figured this would be the time, why we have the ground opened up and everything else, run the conduit, instead of, kind of doing it twice. Okay?
One thing we did to stretch the budget further was we got involved towards the end and we did the final loaming and seeding around the tennis courts, and we'll be negotiating credit, which optimistically will cover the cost of the service upgrade. So we may still be able to look at lighting half the tennis courts as sort of a worst-case scenario.
In their grant process, they actually just submitted the grant last week to the USTA. They're pretty confident they're going to get it. So I believe it's a $50,000 grant. They have $17,000 left in their I guess their kitties, I guess you could say, for the Tennis Association. Western Mass Tennis Association also has another $5,000. So that's roughly about $62,000, I believe. 50,000, 17, and the 5,000. Footings have already been paid for through the Tennis Association, which was 10,000. So the lights roughly are going to come to 55,000. So hopefully we're going to get it done within those parameters.
Awesome.
Okay. Moving on, old fire station. That work has been completed about 99%. I did go over with the contractor last week, a couple punch list items. He was supposed to show up yesterday to do a couple more minor repairs that kind of stuck out at me once those we went over the facility, but those will be completed by the end of the week. Bircham Park chiller replacement project. I kind of got a date scheduled for that. That's been probably a 3 or 4 month project, getting that piece of equipment in. It arrived at Johnson Controls last Thursday. It's a 60-ton York unit. We've scheduled that installation to take place the week of October 7th. That's where we're going to start demoing the existing electrical, the refrigerant lines, chiller barrels, and then the new unit will be in place on Friday, the 10th. We will be removing the old unit and craning the new unit on the roof. It's a half day of school, so that's why we scheduled it for that day. And obviously, because the cooling season will be over, it should be little impact to the school department. After that, the following week we'll be commissioning, running refrigerant, doing the electrical work, and programming the energy management system to take that over.
It's probably worth noting again on the old fire station project, we're looking at a significant give back there.
Yes. Project final total $18,900. That budget was $30,000 minus, I guess, some legal advertisements. So probably roughly about $20,000 in its entirety.
Excellent.
That includes fixing the roof, not replacing the roof, but fixing the...
Yep. And that was the little extra upcharges, the adhesive and the workmanship to apply the membrane to the masonry.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good. John?
Well, we finished Elm Street, our part of it.
And it looks great.
Thank you. Well, everybody's been out there and everybody worked so hard out there. Palmer Paving did a nice job. They held up their end of the bargain. There is one last piece. It's supposed to be just the very edge of the road, hydro-seeded. It's scheduled for tomorrow night. I think that he said he wanted to do it like around 7 or 8 o'clock once the traffic's has dropped off a bit and they can maneuver down the edges of the road. And that will be the final touch as far as we're concerned, I believe. We did all the work that we can do with Daigle as far as the street lights go. So we're actually, other than about an hour tomorrow, we're actually out of that completely, I believe. So that's a good thing for us. And of course, the amount of time that we won't be out there this winter patching and the energy we spend annually trying to keep it safe. So that's a real positive for everybody. Parker Street sidewalk, we originally intended obviously to have that job done prior to this. We had a number of things that benefited the town, taking that construction crew off of Parker Street, Elm Street being one of the places with the lights, as well as the storm drain that crossed Elm Street. That's that one construction crew that we use every year to do our projects. So although we didn't get as far on the sidewalk as we would have liked, we saved money in other areas, significant money in other areas, and we're kind of doing that piecemeal. And again, we would have liked to, I know that it's an inconvenience for the folks that live on Parker Street, and they've been very good, bearing with us, doing it in sections. And again, we save money there having us do that rather than a contractor.
I went by there last night and everything looks nice and clean and neat, and
They've done a
There's
very
no-
nice job. The guys have done a nice
Yeah.
job, but I think even the crew who was working out there would have liked to have had that completed. They know that given a certain period of time, and I think mostly for the homeowners out there, that they know that when we've left there for a week or two here and there, that we were doing construction in other areas, and we don't have different construction crews that are applicable to those types of jobs, concrete work, pipe work. And we have done a good job out there, Tom, thank you, I agree. We're out there now paving the driveways, getting them ready and finished, buttoned up to that one point where we stop. And again, hopefully, there's a possibility later in the season we could go back out there, but if we don't, we'll be good.
but that's one of those projects I feel comfortable starting and stopping.
And I agree. I just wanted to make note that, you know, it's going slower than we would have anticipated had we not had other things to take care of. And I think they were all good things that we needed to do and save the town money.
Are we loam and seeded and repaired all the sprinkler lines? So
We
when
have-
we're done for the season, we're 100% up to the...
Dan, we will be 100% as far as safety goes, as far as the paving will be 100%. Sidewalk up to that point is 100%. We loomed and seeded some areas, and it wasn't the perfect time of year to do it. The grass would not grow. It didn't have irrigation. It wasn't being watered, and it's not perfect. I think that probably in the spring, we'll have to go back and top dress some areas, maybe several areas along the edge of the road, and plant it at the right time so that that grass pops. And I think that'll really, and it's not a lot of effort, it's not a lot of work or material, but I think it's something that needs to be done. When
Yeah.
we leave there, the sidewalk will look great, the driveways will be perfect, but I think, and everything will be leveled off, but I think we're gonna have to go back and address that a bit.
Isn't this the time to loam and seed for the fall? I thought that was a good time to...
Yes, but we're not gonna probably be able to do it
Okay.
in its entirety. Because we're heading out, we're gonna start, once this is buttoned up, we're gonna start Millbrook. And I think probably when we go back to start the sidewalk in the spring, we can just top dress it while we're there and just move along accordingly with that job, and hopefully, and we're not that far from the end.
How many feet of water main you got in Millbrook?
2,000, 2,200.
2,200 feet of water main?
Yes. So and we intend to start that within a week or so. That was actually skipping down to the next one.
Okay.
We had a meeting out there, Frank Morandi, Mr. Parent, and I talked about it several times, and Frank put together a list of material. The pipe is supposed to be delivered tomorrow, I believe. We're gonna have some, maybe all of it brought out there. We're looking for staging areas, and we have a few, so that we're not constantly bringing materials out there.
All 8-inch?
No, we have some 12, a small amount of 12-inch where we tie in off of Allen Street, and then we reduce it to 8-inch. Down Hunting, down Millbrook,
Yeah.
and it's all 8-inch at that point. So that will be our next project, which we're gonna start again in a week or
How
so.
long you anticipate being out there?
I think, well, it's laid out pretty nicely. Everything's there, everything's underground. It's not ideal. The gas is up on the edge of the road, so we can't, coming down Hunting Road, we're gonna be able to be in the shoulder of the road, so we won't have to dig up the blacktop. Once we get down to Millbrook, we'll be in the road.
Okay.
Mr. Parent and I talked about possibly renting a zipper, a milling machine that we can put on the bucket of the loader.
Yeah.
So that we're not spending a week or two hauling blacktop in and out of there, then again, from here to wherever we bring it.
That would make a whole lot more
Yeah,
sense.
and it does, and I'm very optimistic. I talked to a couple places today that will have something like that in place, and that's gonna save us a lot of time. I would think all of 6 weeks
I would think
for the
so.
main, and if we're lucky enough to free some people up and we can go back and do some services, there are only 3 or 4 houses on the first section, so once we get down to Millbrook, that Hunting Road area can be tested, filled, water tested, and go through that process, and possibly have some sections online prior to.
How many house services is it?
Tom, I don't have it off the top of my head. Do you?
I could guess, but it would only be
Would be a guess,
A
yeah.
guess,
So they'd take that whole Hunting and
I would guess 40.
40 or 50.
Yeah.
Pioneer Circle.
No, right up to Millbrook, right up to the Pioneer Circle area.
Okay.
So you're coming down Hunting, and we will have to go back toward, I don't want to say any names, Senator Lee's house, where it goes into that cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
There's probably about 200 feet there, from, let's say it's 400 feet from Hunting and Millbrook to that cul-de-sac. About the halfway point back toward the cul-de-sac is ductile iron. When that subdivision was put in, there was ductile iron water main put in for those houses in the cul-de-sac. Going
Millbrook
forward.
Circle. You're talking about the old Millbrook.
Right, so as it comes out to the Hunting Road intersection there, that has to be changed out. So we'll be going down there, heading into the cul-de-sac, and then breaking down toward the rest of the neighborhood.
We are installing a very short amount or small amount of pipe in Hamden, because the way the intersection and the town lines lay out, the town line comes diagonally across the intersection.
Right.
So to run the 12-inch line to the opposite side of the street, so we can lay all of the new main, basically without touching the old main and keeping both in service.
Right.
We're just going into Hamden a short distance, and I've been coordinating with Dana Pixley in Hamden, and in fact,
Would Hampton want to buy water? Or?
there'll be a cap at the end of the line, and we've indicated to them one of the benefits would be that they could tie into the line at some point in the future. They, as you probably know, have a very small water district in town that serves, I think, a dozen homes or something like that.
Yeah, particularly up around the dump area
Right.
where they had some issues.
Right.
Right.
But it'll be set up, and I believe that's probably the reason why the line that was put in Allen Street years ago was sized at a 12-inch line, to allow for, supplying Hamden if and when that was ever a desire.
Just one more thing. I don't know if you folks have had any complaints about, let's say, brush growing onto the streets. We're doing as much of that now as we can. We have had great weather to do construction, and we've been going fast and furious, getting caught up with as much road work as we can do, structure repairs and such. And generally we get into a little rainy area here and there, and we go out and we're able to impact that a little harder than we have been. But we are working on that. So if I know that we've had a couple of calls over the last few weeks about this or that, and we've gone out and addressed those accordingly. But we have a crew out trying to take the edge off of that the best we can right now. And of course, if we get into some inclement weather, we will be out there doing that with as many personnel as possible to get caught up.
I haven't heard any complaints, but
So that's it.
We also, one thing to note too on the water main work, probably unlike what we did last year, is we are establishing a dedicated crew to do the water main work then, from the standpoint of you really need to get in there, focus on it, get it done.
Right.
And it was a little bit problematic, I think, last year, where we had some great guys on the crew, but they had a lot of other things that they had to do at the same time, and it just slowed the process down.
So you can have a more designated crew.
Yeah.
Oh, and once again, we were putting the sidewalk in when we broke off to go do the water main in Savoy.
No, I'm aware of that.
So that was, so they're all positives.
Yeah.
But
Oh, they-
absolutely right, we're gonna have,
We accomplished a lot.
well, yes, we did. Did you wanna talk based on the hydrant flushing?
Certainly.
We're gonna start hydrant flushing, September 18th, and we'll have crews out, which we do annually. And I just wanted to, because that's something that's gonna come up, and we've got it down to a pretty good system now. We didn't do it for years, and we have been doing it for the last several years, and are able to go through much quicker. When we first started, there were a lot of issues with people's hot water tanks. The release valves or the pressure valves would stick because they sat and they were never in play.
Right.
As time went on, and we worked through the system, we're doing it every year, we have had virtually no issues the last few years. So we're
You
gonna start.
hit every hydrant in town?
No, we have specific hydrants in certain areas, high pressure and low pressure. And again, I should have wrote the figure down. There are a great number of them. It's gonna take us 4 or 5 days with several people out there. I think we have 10 diffusers, so we'll have 12 people, not the whole time,
Yeah.
but certainly 2 or 3 crews every day to get this done. It is time consuming.
Like next year you do a different third or whatever, or you stick on the same
No,
particular
we
ones?
we have it laid out in such that we're able to do a thorough job with the entire town, and we do it thoroughly every year. So it isn't half this year and half next year. We won't stop until it's completed.
I'd say we flush every street, we don't need to open every hydrant to flush. On a
Right.
cul-de-sac, you'd open up the
Okay.
hydrant at the end of the street, you don't need to open up the intermediate hydrants.
Yeah, my thought
Yeah.
was like the ones that don't get exercised,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. That would ultimately, if we move to it, we've talked a little bit about something known as a unidirectional flushing program, where you
Yeah.
focus on individual segments of pipe and individual valves and individual hydrants, and that would be the means by which you actually do a better job of flushing the pipes. It takes a lot more preparation, it takes a lot more thought in terms of conducting the program, but it does force you to exercise pretty much every valve in your system, every hydrant in your system, but it's a much bigger effort. But it is the direction we do want to move forward to.
John, can you refresh my memory on the testing or flushing of the hydrants? Didn't we do that in cooperation with the fire department at one point?
We
Or
did it
something
one-
we used to do with them, so they're aware of conditions and,
We did at one point, years and years ago. We haven't in several years.
okay.
We've been working independently on this.
Any particular reason?
I can't speak for that.
Right. Well, I've had conversations, in fact, Chief Morissette had approached me a couple of months ago and said, next spring, let's put a plan together where we get one of your guys and one of my guys to go together and do essentially what you have said. And the main reason to do it now is that there have been enough changes to the system over the past 5 or 10 years so that the fire flows available at some of these hydrants will have changed to the positive significantly at some locations. So the goal would be to capture that information, get it all documented.
Right.
Plus they were aware of it, if there was any problems with the hydrant, they could make their note on there,
Right.
that hydrant might not be working or not have full flow or whatever.
In a perfect system, and I don't know any communities that are doing this. I know that there are a lot of communities that flush their hydrants, but being able to go out and work all your valves, flush all your hydrants, do everything 100%, ideally that's what we want to do. That's very difficult to do as far as time consuming and personnel. It would take quite a bit of time, and we're doing more than we ever have in the past, and I think that it's working very well. But as far as the gates, working every hydrant and that kind of thing, is something we'd really like to do.
We now have the ability to develop a good plan for maintaining our hydrants. We've identified every hydrant, we've assessed physically every single hydrant. There's a photograph of every single hydrant in town. If you get onto the town's GIS mapping system right now, we've actually taken all that historical fire flow data that the fire department keeps in a 3-ring binder and incorporated that in the GIS system as well. So you can click on individual fire hydrants and graphically see, what the fire flow was. And when we update this next year, we'll update those numbers there as well. So we don't have the plan yet, but we have the information we need to put the plan together.
Good.
Sounds good. Any other business?
We do want to do that.
I got one thing.
You want to schedule our meeting first?
Sure.
Other business?
I got one thing, just point of information. I was talking with Sergeant Bruno from the police department about having his guys report to us the streetlights that are out, because he seems to be needing a lot of replacement out there. And he assured me that his officers were doing it on a regular basis, and last month he submitted to me a list of all the ones that were reported that were done. So just to let me know that they're still out there doing it on a monthly basis.
That's good.
And then we send that,
He sends it to DPW, I believe to Corey, and Corey then sends it in, but
have
he went
they
to
fixed them?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So can we follow up on that and see if they're actually fixing them?
Yes.
Are we going to?
I just wanted to, you got one?
No, yeah, I got one, but go ahead.
I just wanted to talk briefly about the Munis system and wondered, all three of us actually attended that meeting the other evening. My question or my comments, after leaving that meeting, my question would be, do we have or could you produce a process of how you think it works now so that we could understand it? Because if I attend future meetings or I get engaged, I want to make sure I'm stating facts as we know them and not misunderstandings that I may have. So I guess there was a meeting 3 years ago or whatever that period was that I heard.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah, that things were set up, but I haven't seen that in 3.5 years or whatever, and I don't remember it. I'm assuming for water connections and sewer connections and curb cuts and assignment of houses, numbers, and I'm assuming we need to be in the loop for that kind of information, and I saw what you wrote, which was very good, but I'm just wondering, who should it go to, when, and how many days do they have?
Right.
And maybe for us, what's involved, why would it take all of 2 days, or is it like 5 minutes, or just so that we're in a really good position moving forward, because I was slightly concerned at that meeting that, we should be able to, based on what I think we have to do, we should be able to report timely, and then the building inspector can make his decision or determination. If we can't, I guess we would need to amp up our ability to do that. I just hate the finger getting pointed at our department because we do such a good job at so many things. I don't want to hear that, well, I can't ever get that information from the DPW. It's just, to me, that wouldn't make sense to me, so.
I think one step towards that, it would, you're probably familiar with the software product, I'm blanking it out right now, but basically develop a flow chart of the process, put it in graphical form to make it fairly simple of, you do this, then you do this. And
The Munis, you mean? The Munis system?
Really just, an application comes in.
Right.
What happens to the application? Where does it go? And how is it handled? And what are the turnaround times and deadlines and things like that? And not having been involved in the discussion a couple of years ago, but try to memorialize that in a graphic that shows what was agreed upon at that point.
A flow chart sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
So that's all. I mean, I think I just want to know so that I don't misstate and make it worse or complicate it.
One thing I did somewhat related to that, I forgot to mention relative to Dan Murphy coming on board, is Dan does bring some Munis experience as well, which I have very little of myself, but he also sits on the Conservation Commission and Planning Board in his hometown in Sunderland, so he kind of brings an interesting understanding of that part of the municipal business as well. I think that should help with the workflow as well.
Good.
Sounds great. Are we going to get involved with any crack fill this fall or any roads?
We may be getting short on, I'd like to do some.
Yeah.
What we're really trying to do right now is make certain we know the full cost of Elm Street. Really, the last bill that we'll be paying on Elm Street will be the bill for hydro seeding. Add that up, make certain that we have a clear understanding of the available funds, because we are now starting to dip into fiscal 15 Chapter 90 funds.
Right.
So we don't overcommit ourselves. There's a couple streets, Maple Street, for instance, where we had sealed some of those previously. Some of those cracks have opened up quite a bit right now that
Yeah.
we really need to get back in there and see.
Right.
I didn't want to overcommit, so I was really,
No, better.
wanted to get one thing mostly done before we got too far into another one.
Okay, that sounds great. Want to schedule our next meeting?
I would love to propose Wednesday the 24th instead of Tuesday the 23rd, unless you want to have the meeting at my cruise night, because it's our final cruise night of the season.
Well, look, I ain't missing that. Okay.
So we could have the meeting there. And
If you give me 1 minute to run to my
Yeah.
car.
Go.
I can pull this right in my front seat.
But the following day, Wednesday, would be perfect, if that works.
John, is that 9:25%?
The 24th,
I took the pipes, oops,
the 23rd, Tuesday the 23rd, which will be 2 weeks, is our last cruise night.
So it's the 24th.
Yep, is a Wednesday.
And the 23rd.
Kelly, that's all right for you?
Sweating.
Okay.
I can't do that, that's the plan B.
25th is what I meant, Thursday the 25th.
Thursday the 25th.
I can't make that either.
Oh, Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday the 25th.
Tuesday the 30th.
Yeah,
We're gonna do a cookout that day and have the meeting right after. So I'm trying to get creative.
We're not gonna do any work.
That's not good either.
how about Wednesday the 1st?
He's gone.
I'm gone.
Until the 13th.
Until the 13th.
I'm the only flexible guy with my schedule. I can meet all those dates and you guys are messed
Hey,
up.
I'm fine for the 24th. I'm fine for the 25th. I can do the 29th, the 26th.
Wait a minute.
I'm not missing another cruise night. How about the 22nd on a Monday?
He's a busy guy.
Yeah.
He is busy.
Nobody's busier than Dan Burek.
Come on. He's the
Wait a
man.
minute, let's see.
Tell us what day you can. How's that? And Tom and I will check our schedule.
Can we do it earlier in the day?
Sure. What day would that
Instead of
be?
5 o'clock?
On the 24th?
Why don't we stay on the 24th?
Yeah, no, 24th I can't do.
Oh.
25th I can do earlier, or the 22nd I can do earlier.
25th at 4 o'clock. How earlier is earlier?
No,
3 o'clock.
I was thinking about like 1
Like
o'clock.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
On the 22nd?
On the
25th.
22nd, 22nd or 25th?
25th.
25th, 1 o'clock.
Okay.
I say we make him buy lunch.
That's what I say.
Where are we gonna do it at? We can do it
You
here?
can do it here. They're,
Let's do it here.
they're gone, right?
You're out here? 1 o'clock?
All right.
We'll do it here.
Okay.
That was a...
Motion to adjourn.
Actually, before we get to there,
Oh,
Whoa, 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 whoa,
Oh,
whoa.
we go to section, I'm sorry, we have to go to executive
We're going
session. I was pushing.
so we're gonna make a motion to adjourn and not to return to our regular meeting. We're gonna go into executive session for the purpose of
Litigation.
litigation and purchase of real property.
got it.
So you're gonna have to do a roll call vote. So you second that?
Mr. Buren?
Second?
All right. So now you gotta do a all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Barrett, aye.
Mr. Mayberry, aye.
Mr. Leary? Aye.